When I was in college, I spent most of my study sessions either in the library or at the campus Starbucks. The library was peaceful and free to access, but the Starbucks was more convenient, closer to my classes, and had the added benefit of coffee. Plus, it was a social hub where I could hang out with friends while studying. It became my routine to head there after class, ensuring I completed everything promptly to enjoy free evenings. I rarely paid attention to the people around me, my focus fortified by caffeine and ADHD medication. However, my friends, who were chattier, enjoyed observing others during breaks. At the beginning of the second semester, a new face appeared at the coffee shop. If not for my friends mentioning it, I'd have assumed he'd been around all year like everyone else, but they insisted he was a stranger. He seemed harmless initially, blending in with the crowd, more a potential gossip subject than a threat. When they pointed him out to me, all I saw was a guy with a latte, working on his laptop, jotting notes, and listening to music. My friends asked my opinion about him, whether he was cute or if I knew him. He was pale, a bit greasy, and had a weak chin, but otherwise unremarkable. Stranger, I remarked, maybe a tad too loudly, given the sudden laughter from my friends. His glance in our direction lasted only a moment before I averted my eyes and returned to work. He continued frequenting the coffee shop, doing the same routine every day. I didn't think much of it, even when I encountered him repeatedly throughout that week. Yet, I couldn't shake off the fact that I was subconsciously noticing his presence. Normally, I barely registered the familiar faces around me. So, why was this guy different? I couldn't say. Nonetheless, I had lectures, textbooks, and notes to focus on, not peculiar strangers in coffee shops. Once, after a class near the library, I chose to study there instead of going to Starbucks across campus. It was serene. No one engaged in people watching. Everyone had their noses buried in books, except for one person, him. About 10 tables away, he sat, and although I tried to disregard him, he kept staring, not glancing, but a prolonged, unsettling gaze that made me uncomfortable. I brushed it off, thinking he might have a crush, but eventually, he faded into the background. Yet, he began appearing wherever I went. Even after my evening class that ended at 8 p.m., I walked back, noticing nobody but regular students exiting. But once I reached the sidewalk, there he was. My stomach knotted in fear. I quickened my pace, trying to avoid interaction, but he persisted. I made it inside my dormitory hall, but he followed, rushing to my room on the first floor. I prayed he wouldn't sneak in behind me. As I glanced back, he stood outside, fixated on me through the glass. Inside, I locked the door, my roommate absent. Claustrophobia encroached as I tried to study, but focus eluded me. What should have taken an hour stretched into 3, my nerves frazzled. At 11 p.m., exhausted, I fell asleep. I didn't stir when my roommate returned, only experiencing unsettling nightmares I couldn't recall clearly, awakening drenched in sweat. I discovered a paper stuck to my stomach, soaked with sweat. It read, "You are a victim, an ugly one." My heart sank. I panicked, asking my roommate if she'd locked the door when she returned. She shrugged, and checking. We found it unlocked. It dawned on me that creep might have entered. I reported him, but the school's response was lackluster, advising me to contact the police if it recurred. Fortunately, he vanished, likely moving on to other targets. It taught me to be more vigilant, to heed potential dangers lurking in plain sight. The chilling experience shifted my perspective drastically. It took a while to comprehend the extent of the stalking. How that seemingly unassuming individual, that weak-chinned creep, wasn't even a student. He'd surreptitiously studied my routine, and likely that of other girls, an unsettling realization. Was it truly just because I'd labeled him ugly that triggered a month-long obsession? It baffled me. I reported the incident, but the school's response felt insufficient. They seemed indifferent, dismissing it unless it escalated. His disappearance from college life left an unsettling void, prompting me to remain hyper-aware of my surroundings. Despite the terror, it taught me a vital lesson: to be vigilant, to recognize potential threats, and to trust my instincts. It reshaped my life, urging me to be cautious yet empowered in navigating the world. That eerie encounter stayed with me, a reminder of the concealed dangers lurking beneath the ordinary, urging me to prioritize safety without succumbing to fear. I was crossing the street on my way home from campus when a car stopped at the stoplight. The driver yelled out the window, asking if I wanted to party with him. I ignored him and kept walking. 2 blocks later, the same car drove up, did a 3-point turn, and pulled onto the curb to stop me. The driver and another man stepped out, asking my name and again inviting me to their party. They were drinking, celebrating their friend's drunken birthday in the back seat. They kept persisting, asking me repeatedly to join them. I tried to keep things peaceful, rejecting their offers calmly. I knew how unpredictable drunk people could be. It dragged on longer than I wanted, but I didn't want to escalate things. As a result, I ended up walking away when a car behind them honked, causing a road situation. I took a sketchy alleyway, hoping to lose them as they figured out the road. I was almost home, thinking I'd lost them. But as I approached my temporary residence, a car honked behind me, revving its engine. It was the same guys. "Hey, where you going?" "The party's this way," the driver said. I rushed in, slammed the door shut, and locked it just in time. Ironically, a police officer across the street witnessed it all. He pulled the driver over and began questioning him. The driver got arrested for driving under the influence, while the others were let go. I told the officer everything, grateful for his intervention. I hope they don't return or remember where I live. I live with others. So there's safety in numbers? But it doesn't ease the anxiety from this ordeal. Safety precautions are vital, even when you're not alone. It was a chilling reminder of how quickly a situation can escalate. I've been more cautious since then, making sure to stay aware of my surroundings. Even with safety measures in place, the lingering unease remains. Sharing the incident with friends and authorities was crucial for my peace of mind. Knowing there are people around who will step in and help makes a world of difference. It's a lesson in being vigilant and relying on community support when needed. I'm grateful for the police officers' timely presence and action. It's a reminder to trust instincts and seek help when things feel off. Staying safe is an ongoing priority, and I'm more determined than ever to ensure my well-being. Alright, there is this guy in high school named Ethan. Pretty much everyone kept their distance from him except for his 2 friends, who were equally gross. In my junior year, I had the misfortune of being assigned to a seat right next to him in one of my classes. I immediately planned to ask the teacher to move my seat at the end of the class period on the first day. Before I could even get a chance, Ethan was already starting to annoy me. He kept asking all these questions about where I got my bag, my shoes, and my top, if my hair color was natural or dyed. And all this was coming from a person whose presence I could smell from 3 feet away. I made it through the first class period and stayed after to talk to the teacher, but she totally stonewalled me. She was one of those teachers that never really made exceptions for anyone or anything. I had been warned about her by some seniors before. I thought she would let it slide instead of making me sit next to this creepy guy in the school for the whole year, but no. It only took a couple of days for Ethan to develop a crush on me. To make matters worse, I was still walking to and from school. Ethan found out about this and took the opportunity to follow me home one day, or as he put it, to escort me home to make sure I was safe. As if I hadn't been able to take care of myself for the last 2 years. My house was a 15-minute walk from the school. It was usually a perfect amount of time and went through a good area time to relax between responsibilities and clear my head. Ethan made this feel like an eternal hell. We were out in the open, so everybody in the school was able to see us. Most people knew about what was going on, but some people actually thought I wanted to hang out with him. When I knew I had to sit next to him permanently, I tried to be as nice as I could, which wasn't very nice, but even that had been too much. It was too late to be mean because I tried that too, and it didn't work. He found a way to gush about everything I said and did. He kept comparing us and arguing that we were very similar somehow. He was obsessed with the idea that we could get together and be like Bonnie and Clyde, but my name isn't even close to Bonnie. The worst part of him walking with me was the fact that he knew where I lived. It's not a surprise that he tried to invite himself in, but I drew a hard line there and almost spit in his face. The only reason I didn't is because he probably would have really enjoyed that. I tried talking to my counselor about this to see if I could change classes, but he was also unhelpful. He would say things like Ethan hasn't done anything wrong, which was pretty much useless for me. At the beginning of September, we had a 3-day weekend for Labor Day. I reveled in having an extra day away from Ethan, but I was fully aware that he was responsible for the fact that I hadn't been able to reconnect with any of my friends from school, which made my plans for the weekend bleak. I was so depressed that all I wanted to do was lay in bed anyway. I only had one thing going on, which was a baby shower on Saturday for a relative I barely knew. The night before, I had terrible sleep. I'm thus getting rushes of anxiety for seemingly no reason, and every time I started to fall asleep, I fell straight into a nightmare about Ethan. At one point, I woke up, and I even thought I saw his face in the window. I had a mini heart attack, but when I blinked, he was gone. Just to be sure, I got up and looked outside, but there was no sign of him in the backyard. I closed my blinds and even put down the blackout curtains I never use. I couldn't sleep at all after that. I really couldn't decide if what I saw was real or just a visual disturbance. Sometimes when I'm thus waking up, I see a crystal clear vision of a giant spider descending toward me on a thread. But when I blink, it goes away before my body even wakes up enough to move. In the morning, I asked my parents to make extra sure that we locked up the house. Before we left for the baby shower, I told them about the situation with Ethan and how he had been following me around. Thankfully, at least they had concern for me. My dad assured me that he would lock the house, and my mother went the extra mile of reminding me she was good with a taser. Then she gave me the little bottle of pepper spray. From her cane, it made me feel a little bit better, but I was still out of it the whole day. My relatives kept asking me if I was okay, and all I could say was yes. We didn't get home until about 8 o'clock that night. I had a snack in the kitchen, and while I was there, I made sure that the back door was still locked. Afterward, I went straight to my room and watched YouTube videos on my laptop until I passed out. Sometime later, I woke up, but I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe either. I was gripped with sleep paralysis. The closest thing I have had to a sleep paralysis demon is the dangling spider I mentioned earlier, but there was no sign of a spider. I kept trying to force myself to take a breath, but it was like I had forgotten how to do it. I tried to relax instead and looked around my room, but I got creeped out because it was darker than usual due to the curtains. Of course, I could clearly see Ethan's face peeking over the edge of my bed. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest, but I still couldn't move. I kept staring at his face, waiting for it to go away, praying for it to be a hallucination. But when I blinked, he didn't go away, he moved. Ethan slowly stood up and hovered over me. "Let's have a sleepover," he whispered as he approached my mouth with a strip of duct tape. At the last second, I broke free from the grip of sleep paralysis and screamed as I grabbed the pillow next to me and stuffed it into his face. He blindly stuck the piece of tape over my mouth, but while he couldn't see what was going on, I quickly reached underneath the pillow I was sleeping on and grabbed the pepper spray my mother gave me and undid the safety like she explained. Then I pointed it right at his face at the exact moment. He ripped the pillow away. I fired the spray, and it nailed him as well as it possibly could. But some of it backfired onto me. We were both incapacitated. But luckily, it only took another 15 seconds for my parents to come running into my room, at which point they conducted a citizen's arrest until the police arrived. The cops did a sweep of the house and found damage to the outside of the lock on the back door, which indicated Ethan had picked the lock. It truly doesn't surprise me at all that lock picking is something he is good at. After the incident, Ethan was taken into custody and faced legal repercussions. He was confined to a juvenile detention center for a period, but the process didn't end there. Through a cumbersome bureaucratic ordeal and multiple discussions with the school authorities, I finally succeeded in getting him expelled from school. It was a relief to know that he wouldn't be around to cause any further distress or danger. Once, I was in a relationship with the craziest girl I'd ever met. I was desperate for love and thought I'd found it in her. She was stunning but utterly toxic. She drained my finances, isolated me from friends, and consumed all my time. Her brand of crazy was unique and suffocating. Breaking up was hard, but I did it in person, privately. She lashed out, screaming and causing chaos, but I stood firm. Her parting words were ominous, warning that I'd regret leaving her. Relief washed over me as I drove away, feeling liberated. I reclaimed my life, reconnecting with friends and enjoying the things I'd missed. But warnings from friends lingered, saying she wasn't finished. Their predictions came true. Strange occurrences followed. Mysterious symbols appeared on my car, then slashed tires, and eerie signs left at my doorstep. I even caught glimpses of her lurking. A note with threatening undertones, and a rusty nail signaled a terrifying turn. I disposed of it, but the onslaught continued. She drove that same nail through my windshield, blurring my vision and my sense of safety. Then, a chilling encounter. I smelled her perfume, and she emerged from my back seat with that rusty nail, poised to harm. Her threats meant nothing to me anymore. Anger surged, and in a moment of rage, I acted to protect myself. I accelerated, causing her to injure herself against the windshield. The law intervened. She pressed charges, but the truth prevailed, revealing her pattern of stalking and harassment. However, the nightmare persisted. Legal battles ensued, adding to the turmoil. The ordeal taught me to avoid impulsive choices and stay away from toxic people, no matter what sharp object they wield. Despite navigating through legal challenges, the turmoil persisted. Unfortunately, she found a new way to disrupt my life. I'm currently facing a lawsuit, but I believe that, in the end, my defense will prevail. This experience has taught me to be cautious of impulsive choices and to steer clear of toxic relationships, even in the face of threatening situations. Seeking help and acting responsibly to protect oneself, as well as seeking legal support when needed, is crucial. I'm after this guy named Steve on Tinder. I wasn't looking for anything serious or a hookup, maybe just friends. I guess. I was just bored. That was it. I thought he seemed cool because we had similar interests in music, style, clothes, and so on. Started talking to him, and within a few hours, he got my Snapchat and began messaging me there. He asked if I wanted to hang out later that night. I didn't respond for about 30 minutes. And that's when he started sending multiple messages at once without waiting for my reply. First a question mark, then 15 minutes later, a hello with another question mark. I don't like it when people do that. It's a red flag. Especially from someone you've never met online. I began ignoring him altogether. It made me uncomfortable. In my experience, when a guy does that, especially someone you've never met, they're usually very needy or sometimes controlling. So, I backed off and didn't think much of it. I was out walking my dog at a nearby park that I usually visit a few times a week. I live in an apartment, so I like to make sure he gets the exercise he deserves. We took a break by this bench where I sat down for a few minutes, enjoying the view, relaxing in the nice spring weather, appreciating nature. About 10 minutes into that, a random guy starts running my way. "Emily? Hey, is that you? It's me, Steve. I was just wondering what you were up to. Nice to meet you." "What a coincidence. We just ran into each other," he said. Yeah, I replied with a concerned look. I started panicking because I knew something was wrong. This didn't feel like a coincidence. It didn't take long for me to realize he wasn't even the guy. In the pictures, he had been catfishing me, and that immediately sent a shiver down my spine. I knew I was in trouble. Then, I remembered I had my Snapchat location turned on for all my friends. I had forgotten I turned it on months ago to test something and forgot to turn it back off. This man was literally stalking me. He slowly started to harass me more and more. As he realized I was getting more frustrated and disinterested in him, at first, it was by asking if I still wanted to hang out. I ended up telling him to leave me alone and that he was scaring me. It didn't take long before he started yelling at me. I was honestly shaken, and at this point, I was in fight or flight mode. My dog started barking at him, attempting to protect me. He backed up a bit, but continued harassing me with his words. He began saying some very disgusting things that I don't care to even share. Right now, really inappropriate and horrible things that you should never say to someone. Thankfully, an old man jogging by recognized I was being harassed and scared him off. I'm so thankful for that man because I don't know what else would have happened if someone hadn't intervened. The guy took off, and I've never heard from him since. I obviously blocked him on everything. I'm still on edge. And sometimes I worry I'll run into him when I'm alone or something. Please, just be careful who you talk to on the internet. This could happen anywhere at any time. There are weirdos out there everywhere. I've been more cautious since that incident. I realize how easily things can spiral out of control. Even when you're lost trying to pass the time, it's a stark reminder of the darker side of online interactions. Sometimes, it feels like a close call, but it's a lesson learned staying vigilant. Setting boundaries and trusting instincts are crucial. I'm grateful for the kind stranger who stepped in. Their intervention made me feel less alone in a moment of vulnerability. I've taken extra steps to ensure my online safety, and I hope sharing this story reminds others to do the same. It's unsettling to think about what might have happened, but I'm determined not to let fear dictate my actions. So, if you ever feel uneasy about someone or a situation online, trust that feeling and take steps to protect yourself.